Have you ever seen an act of kindness so quiet, so unexpected, that it stopped an entire hallway in its tracks? Welcome back to Twilight Tales, where we uncover the extraordinary moments hidden in ordinary lives. And if you're visiting us for the first time, make sure to like, share, and subscribe because the story you're about to hear might just change how you see the world. Today's story isn't about wealth or power. It's about a soft-spoken janitor, a little girl who couldn't speak, and a billionaire mother who was running out of hope, until one moment showed her that miracles sometimes wear overalls and carry a mop. In a private school filled with the latest technology and the finest teachers, a young autistic girl named Ava struggled just to make it through the day. Meltdowns, silence, fear. No one could reach her, not even her mother who had spent millions on specialists and therapy. But one ordinary day, everything changed. Not because of a breakthrough in medicine. Not because of a fancy expert with letters behind their name. But because of bubbles. Yes, soap bubbles. And the man who blew them wasn't a teacher. He was the black janitor everyone ignored. What he didn't know was that Ava's billionaire mother was watching from the end of the hallway, and what she saw left her speechless. This story matters because it reminds us that compassion has no uniform. And sometimes the people we overlook are carrying the answers we've been searching for all along. Stay with us, because what happens next will warm your heart. Ava was 6 years old, with big, searching eyes and a silence that filled every room she entered. She had been diagnosed with autism at age 3, nonverbal with extreme sensitivity to sound, light, and unexpected touches. The kind of child who lived in her own world not because she wanted to, but because the outside world was just too loud, too confusing, too painful. Her mother, Elise, had tried everything. She was a billionaire tech CEO, sharp, powerful, respected. In her business life, no problem was too big to solve. But when it came to Ava, she was just a mother, helpless and aching, watching her little girl retreat more and more each day. Elise had enrolled Ava in one of the most elite private schools in the city. Therapists, specialists, sensory rooms, all state-of-the-art. But nothing seemed to make a difference. Most days, Ava sat alone. She didn't play with the other children. She didn't speak. She barely made eye contact. Teachers did their best, but Ava's needs were beyond traditional teaching methods. She had meltdowns, sudden, overwhelming outbursts when her senses were overloaded. The sound of a bell. A flickering light. A shoe squeaking across a floor. The school had grown used to her quiet presence, and in a way, Ava had become invisible, there but unreachable. Elise, despite her wealth and status, was on the verge of breaking. She had built companies, led hundreds of employees and changed industries, but she couldn't reach her daughter. And no amount of money could buy a way in. That's why, when one quiet moment in the hallway changed everything, it wasn't just surprising. It was life-altering. But before that happened, someone else had noticed Ava long before her mother realized. Someone no one ever paid attention to. And that someone was the janitor. His name was Marvin. He wore the same navy blue coveralls every day, walked the halls with a quiet shuffle, and kept his eyes low as he swept up the messes no one else wanted to deal with. To most people at the school, Marvin was just the janitor. They didn't know where he came from. They didn't ask what he thought. Some didn't even bother to nod when passing him in the halls. He was part of the background, like the lockers, the floors, the water fountains. But Marvin saw everything. He noticed when a teacher was having a rough day. He saw when kids were too quiet or too loud. And he especially noticed little Ava, sitting by herself on the bench near the playground, always looking at something far away. There was something about her silence that Marvin understood. What no one knew was that Marvin had a story too. Years ago he had helped raise his sister's child, his niece Maya, who had also been autistic. She too had been nonverbal. She too had struggled. And though she passed away young, the memories Marvin carried were full of both heartbreak and love. Maya had taught him something no school could, how to connect without words. He remembered how she loved bubbles, how she'd giggle and spin and chase them even on the darkest days. So Marvin always kept a small bottle in his cart, tucked between the cleaning supplies. He didn't use them often. But sometimes he just liked to blow them into the air when the halls were empty, watching them float like tiny pieces of peace. He never expected anyone to notice. Especially not Ava. But one day as he swept near the cafeteria, he looked up and saw her watching the bubbles. No words. No sound. Just her wide, curious eyes. He smiled, but said nothing. It was just a moment. He didn't know that moment would lead to everything that came next. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when it happened. The school day was almost over. Kids were buzzing through the halls, teachers gathering their things, and the noise in the building had started to rise, Feet pounding, lockers slamming, voices echoing. For Ava it was too much. She had been doing well that day by her standards. No meltdowns. No sudden shutdowns. But all it took was one screech from a folding chair and the sharp slam of a locker door. In an instant, her world collapsed. She dropped to the floor right outside the library, curled in a tight ball, hands over her ears, body rocking. Her breathing became erratic, and her soft hums turned into sharp cries that echoed down the hallway. Students stopped and stared. A few teachers rushed over, calling for the school therapist. But no one could touch her. No one could calm her. She was lost inside the storm and no one could reach her. Elise had just pulled into the school parking lot. She had been in meetings all day, her phone on silent. When she finally saw the missed calls, she ran, heels clicking through the rain, fear rising in her throat. Not again, she thought. Not another breakdown. Inside, Ava was still sobbing, her body trembling. And then, quietly from down the hall, Marvin appeared. He didn't speak. He didn't rush. He simply parked his cleaning cart a few feet away and crouched down slowly. He reached into the side pouch of his cart, pulled out a small bottle of bubbles and twisted the cap open. No one told him to. No one expected him to. But with steady, practiced hands, Marvin lifted the wand and blew. A single bubble floated through the air, then another and another. Soft, slow, gentle. Ava froze. Her cries quieted. She peeked through her fingers, eyes locked on the shimmering orbs dancing through the air like little stars. Her breathing slowed. Her rocking stopped. The hallway, once filled with noise and panic, fell completely silent. And from the end of the corridor, Elise had just entered, stunned. She had never seen her daughter like this. The bubbles floated like tiny galaxies, spinning and catching the hallway lights in soft rainbow hues. Ava's fingers slowly parted from her ears. Her eyes followed one bubble as it rose, hovered, then gently popped on a locker door. Her chest, once heaving with panic, now moved slower, steadier. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. But she was still. Marvin didn't move closer. He didn't ask her to do anything. He simply kept blowing, each breath launching a quiet stream of shimmering orbs that danced in the air between them. And then, without warning, Ava reached out. Her small hand floated up, chasing a bubble that drifted toward her. She missed it. Tried again. Caught one just barely and let it pop on her palm. A faint sound escaped her lips. A sound that wasn't a cry. It wasn't a scream. It was laughter. Soft, broken, but unmistakably a laugh. The staff stood frozen. Teachers exchanged stunned glances. One even teared up. They had never seen her react like this. Not to any therapy, not to music, not to light boards or flashcards or puppets. Just bubbles. And a janitor no one had ever asked to help. Elise stood at the far end of the hallway, her mouth slightly open, her purse slipping off her shoulder. Her heart raced, not from panic but disbelief. She had tried everything. Spent years flying in specialists. Read every book. Sat through every therapy session. And now, here was her daughter, calm, playful, alive in a way she hadn't seen in years, all because of one man and a bottle of bubbles. Marvin looked up and noticed Elise. He gave her a small nod, humble and quiet, as if to say, "I'm not trying to fix her. I'm just here." Elise couldn't speak, couldn't move. She just watched as her daughter let out another soft giggle, and reached out again for the next bubble. Elise finally stepped forward, her heels clicking softly on the tile as she approached the scene. She wasn't sure what to say, wasn't even sure how to breathe. For so long she had lived in a constant state of trying to fix, trying to help, trying to find the one thing that would break through to her daughter. Now here was Marvin, kneeling on the floor, still blowing bubbles. Not forcing anything. Just being present. Just offering peace in the only language Ava seemed to understand. Elise slowly knelt beside her daughter, who was now sitting upright, her eyes wide and locked onto a large, slow-moving bubble. Ava didn't flinch when her mother placed a hand on her back. That alone brought tears to Elise's eyes. She looked at Marvin. Her voice was soft, trembling. "How did you do that?" He didn't smile. He just kept his eyes on Ava and said, "Sometimes, you just have to meet them where they are." Those words hit Elise harder than she expected. Not because they were profound but because they were true. All this time she'd been pulling her daughter toward the world, trying to make her fit, to change her, to fix her. Marvin had simply gone to her world instead. Elise wiped her eyes. Do you work with kids like her?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I just clean up after them." "But how did you know what to do?" Marvin looked down for a moment. "My niece, she was like her. She used to love bubbles. It was one of the few ways I could reach her. Elise nodded slowly. She looked back at Ava, who now had her hand in the air, trying to catch another bubble. A hint of a smile on her lips. I'd like to talk more with you. After school, Elise said. Marvin gave a small nod. Of course, ma'am. For the first time in years, Elise didn't feel lost. She felt hope. And she never expected it would come from the man holding a mop and a plastic bottle of bubbles. Elise finally stepped forward, her heels clicking softly on the tile as she approached the scene. She wasn't sure what to say, wasn't even sure how to breathe. For so long she had lived in a constant state of trying to fix, trying to help, trying to find the one thing that would break through to her daughter. Now here was Marvin, kneeling on the floor, still blowing bubbles. Not forcing anything. Just being present. Just offering peace in the only language Ava seemed to understand. Elise slowly knelt beside her daughter, who was now sitting upright, her eyes wide and locked onto a large, slow-moving bubble. Ava didn't flinch when her mother placed a hand on her back. That alone brought tears to Elise's eyes. She looked at Marvin. Her voice was soft, trembling. How did you do that? He didn't smile. He just kept his eyes on Ava and said, sometimes, you just have to meet them where they are. Those words hit Elise harder than she expected. Not because they were profound, but because they were true. All this time she'd been pulling her daughter toward the world, trying to make her fit, to change her, to fix her. Marvin had simply gone to her world instead. Elise wiped her eyes. Do you work with kids like her? He shook his head. No, ma'am. I just clean up after them. But how did you know what to do? Marvin looked down for a moment. My niece, she was like her. She used to love bubbles. It was one of the few ways I could reach her. Elise nodded slowly. She looked back at Ava, who now had her hand in the air, trying to catch another bubble. A hint of a smile on her lips. I'd like to talk more with you. After school, Elise said. Marvin gave a small nod. Of course, ma'am. For the first time in years, Elise didn't feel lost. She felt hope. And she never expected it would come from the man holding a mop and a plastic bottle of bubbles. The next morning, Marvin arrived at school just like he always did, early, unnoticed, broom in hand. But that day things were different. Waiting for him in the front office was Elise, holding a manila folder and standing beside the school's principal. Her expression was serious but kind. I hope you'll hear me out, she said. Marvin nodded cautiously. Elise opened the folder and slid it across the counter. Inside was a formal job offer, created by her company, but in partnership with the school. The title, Student Wellness Liaison, Sensory and Behavioral Support. Full-time. Full salary. Full benefits. You'd still be working here, she explained, but not just cleaning. I want you to train staff, work with parents, help create calm spaces, do what you did for Ava for other children too. Marvin stared at the paper, then slowly shook his head. Ma'am, I'm no expert. I don't have degrees or credentials. I'm just... Elise gently interrupted. You're someone who sees children like my daughter when no one else does. That's more valuable than any resume. Still, Marvin hesitated. He looked down at his hands, rough from years of work, calloused but steady. I appreciate it, he said. Truly. But I don't need a new title. I don't mind pushing the broom. Elise smiled. Then keep the broom. But take the offer too. He looked at her, surprised. She continued, because the truth is, Marvin, you don't need to stop being the janitor to be something more. You already are. After a long pause, Marvin nodded. I'll do it, on one condition, he said with a grin. You let me keep my bubble stash. Elise laughed, a real relieved laugh. And later that week, Ava did something she'd never done before. She walked down the hallway, reached up, and hugged Marvin around the waist. No words. But none were needed. Today Marvin still works at the school. He still carries his mop, still whistles while he walks, and still keeps that little bottle of bubbles tucked into the side of his cart. But now he does more than clean floors. He calms storms. He builds trust. He gives hope. Children seek him out, not because he talks the loudest, but because he listens the quietest. And Ava? She's different now. She still doesn't speak much, but her laughter has returned. She plays a little more. She reaches out. And every morning before class she waits by the main hallway, not for her teacher, but for Marvin. He'll blow her one bubble. She'll catch it. And the day begins. All because one man chose to show up with heart, not just with hands. This story is a reminder that true heroes often wear no capes, no suits, no titles. Sometimes they wear scuffed work boots and carry bottles of bubbles. And sometimes, They change lives by simply being kind when no one is watching. So if this story moved you even just a little, take a second to think, who are the invisible people in your life who might be carrying hidden wisdom? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Has someone ever surprised you with a simple act of kindness? We read every message. And if you felt this story, please like, share, and subscribe to Twilight Tales, where we bring you more powerful moments like this, stories that remind us. The smallest gestures often leave the biggest impact. Until next time, keep your heart open. You never know who's blowing bubbles just behind the noise.